Hello ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's the 26th of May 2021 and mistakes and successes, or failings and successes perhaps I should say. I don't really know, we just saw, 2 days after the first quarter moon, we saw a massive earthquake in China. I think it was a 7.3, but a lot of buildings came down just as I said it would. Remember 2 days after the last first quarter moon in April, we had a big earthquake in Chile, exactly as I said it would occur. And then 1 day after the last quarter moon, we had a big earthquake in Chile. And I said, when we get to the following new moon, it would begin on that day, and sure enough we had an earthquake in Japan on that day. We had Etna and Stromboli going off on that day, and then 2 days after, the big earthquake in China, plus the big volcano in the Congo. And that's also really interesting, because you saw the entire you saw all the Bitcoin, all the digital currencies do a major crash, and there's lots and lots of stuff that's unfolding now, especially with what's happening in all this talk about all these mortgages which haven't been paid, and now it seems that all of the people who haven't been paying their mortgages are now going to be deemed as delinquent in their credit ratings, and they won't be able to sell their houses unless they pay back all of that money that they've missed, plus interest. This is as an order on all of those properties now that where there's delinquency involved. And so the government is now being held responsible for that. So the government, if they don't get their money, then they're going to end up owning our houses. Not that I own a house, but you can imagine that, and this is going to have a knock-on effect, because now they're saying that it was not right, and the government should take responsibility, and that knock-on effect is going to come back to the renters that are now going to have to pay all the money that they haven't been paying. That could be a very big potential as well. There's all this instability going on, and this could be the massive precursor for the massive contraction that we're about to see, because the money's going to try and do what we're going to try and do. Remember the Sichuan earthquake that occurred, that I'm of a mind was the precursor for the 2008, because the money wants to do what we want to do. The money wants to go to safe ground. We want to take our money to safe ground and make safe ground. Imagine China going bang during that time. Imagine knowing that China was going to be seriously affected by earthquakes, and it was just without any doubt at all. I showed you in the last model how I can take the using the model that I've built, the latest model that I've built in February, March 2021, or completed in February, March 2021, to demonstrate all the different movements of what I call Kerberos, Charon and Hydra, the 3 planets that I'm suggesting have come round and crossed. And this is actually the area of more corrections, not in my flybys. The flybys, the Sichuan earthquake, like I say, occurred on the first quarter moon in May 2008. Well, that first quarter moon in 2008 was I think it was the 21st, exactly when I said you were going to see. Not because, it was on the 19th, but 2 days after was the 21st, and that was the most interesting. And the only reason I adapted it and changed it from the first quarter moon to 2 days after was simply because we'd seen in April, like I said, 2 days after the first quarter moon, the earthquake occurs. Remembering, as I keep repeating, that all of the earthquakes in that December-January period and the September period. You remember in 2018, I said, you cannot tell me we're not going to get oceanic anomalies. I'd been to America the year before on the very flyby. You know what I mean? The flyby before that was the one that had also the Matt Rogers shot on the 15th of August 2016 had also put me put my model on the map, as well as as the shot that came in on the 17th of August 2017 when we turn up for the big Planet X conference in America and put on the day of the flyby by Steve Olson and the WSO channel. So there's you know that all of these flybys around that sort of time seem to happen on the full of the new moon. Carlos Rada's big prediction in 1939 on the full of the new moon. The kind of like the big earthquake that occurred on the 26th of December 2004, which was this same object that caused the 2008 Sichuan earthquake on the 12th of May. December, it occurs on the full moon. All the crossings in August, in May, June, July, seem to be around the neat moon. So why is that? Remember in 2008, we're going to call it Hydra. Hydra came under the Earth, under the ecliptic plane of what the Earth is really orbiting, cut up through, and then carried on going up. So when it came to July, August, it was going up, back up to the Jupiter system back then that was above us in 2008. So May, June, May really was that point. It was cutting through and getting up. So it was that lower aspect. It was that kind of like January, February, March, April, May aspect, because this object was cutting through there and going back up to the Pluto system above it. Then we saw the big shot that Jeff P posted, like I always post now, you know, because it's so pivotal in the referencing of understanding the movement of this thing going through the ecliptic. That shot from Jeff P on the 14th of October 2016, where we see it cutting through the ecliptic. We see the shot, we see it plasma charging into the side of Mars. And this is where the big correction that I now need to make, and the most difficult one that you're going to all struggle with more than anything else. And this is the biggest part, the big revelation for me, which has come out over the last few days. I mean, I've been considering it for a while, but I consider a lot of things in my back brain and I play with them, and sometimes they're just too big for my mind to allow to exist. I can't get them past my screaming beliefs that say that's impossible. But I want to change my model very slightly here. And that is to say that Hydra, you know, this guy called Steve Rady has been in contact with me, and he's a skywatcher. And he's recently sent me through a shot which I posted on the thumbnail of my last video, which he caught on the 20th of July 2020. He caught it on the day my mum passed. It's exactly where, you know, the 9th of August, we got the kind of shot that Nick Thomas posted, that eclipsed the sun at sunset on the 9th of July. Which is almost the same place, a very similar size, except that the shot that Steve Rady's showing is 11 days closer. And at that aspect, you can imagine we weren't traveling neck and neck with it. We'd been traveling neck and neck with it, but then we'd gone round, as if to go round, keep going round the sun, as its object Pluto was ahead of it. So we've come, except that it was then it was again coming in above us last year. It was coming in above us, heading out towards where we orbit in July 2020, June, July 2020, but it was still way above us, heading back down to the Jupiter system, which had now crossed the ecliptic. It crossed in 2016. And so what it is understanding that this third object that I've added only because of the mass of this, you know, just staying with this inner one, this first orbit that we saw again on also July the 20th, Comet Neowise last year, but not the big one coming in from the direction of the sun. The one we'd seen, the one I just described earlier, we'd seen it on the 15th of August 2016, we'd seen it on the 17th of August 2017, we'd seen it in 2018. And then we'd been able to predict the big earthquake, and I'd made the video saying you cannot tell me we're not going to get oceanic anomalies, and sure enough the oceanic anomalies occur exactly on the full of the new moon. I forget which it is, but the alignment existed. And we saw it in 2019 on the 3rd of July 2019, an epic shot by the Planet X channel by Alex Luhan again, who caught it again with the epic shot on the 1st of September, the one I always come back to, where we see the whole tail of it, where I was still in the heliocentric model, believing it had to come out in the March, April, May side. That was that flyby, but then we saw it going back out the wrong way, to the right, clearly orbiting something where clearly the GFP shot had shown us on the 14th of October 2016, the point it crossed exactly the same. We had a corroboration. We couldn't believe what we were seeing. So I had to assume that that object was there, which it was. And I can corroborate that with that information and those sightings. Except that that meant that all of these things were orbiting something basically over here, and they were coming, some of them were getting so close to our sun, they were coming around our sun. But that kind of, it killed the idea of a heliocentric model there. It enabled me to take a new model into a new direction with a corroboration of data, because I put my money on the table 6 months in advance and said that's where you're going to see it. Each and every one of these flybys, 200 days before, I've managed to predict them because of the way in which they keep occurring. The absolute cyclic patterns that I can go to the March eruption of the Icelandic volcano in this year, 2021, and I can deduct the exact cycles of the object that caused it. I can show you all the cycles of its movements right back with my current model to 2004, but I can use that in a calculator or in an animation, and I can show you exactly why and when Vesuvius went off in March 1944, because of Carlos Ferrada's predictions and understanding of when it crossed the ecliptic, just like it's crossing now, back in with the arrival of Pluto in 1930. So we're seeing this big pattern. So where's the error? Where's the error? Where's the real error that I've made in this new, well, the error is the anomaly, the shot I still can't make sense of, the one that's caused the biggest problems, is the shot that silenced Dilmartin. His last shot he posted, the most epic of epic shot, what I had to assume was the dwarf planet itself, because no way could I imagine a big object that close, going round, coming in, going round, moving that fast, at that aspect, and without a tail. I know that sounds better, you know, I assumed that had to be the dwarf planet itself and the way in which we were moving. But actually, if that were true, and our sun were, even if it was not in the heliocentric model, you know, working just on the basis that we orbit our sun once every 365 years, and if that object was over there, as Dilmartin had showed us in this image, but it moves so fast, our sun would do a similar, our own sun, even though we're not directly orbiting that in that same fashion, the movement of Earth with that view, I would struggle to imagine to see it moving that fast. It would have been slower unless that thing was in close proximity to the Earth and literally going past it. Now, so I've always struggled with that shot. I show it in the shots, and I'm assuming it has to be what I call Hydra. It is what I call Hydra. if you like. But what it means is that I need to kind of, from the model I'm showing you here, I need to delete what I'm calling Jupiter going around the Pluto system. That these objects are either orbiting or exacerbating the orbit of these twin tail objects, these 4 twin tail objects. And what I'm going to suggest to you now is that, and I'm so sorry it's so complicated, and for those of you who can stay with me for this, I told you that there would be financial reverberations as that last flyby came in. And sure enough there was, because there's people who know this. They've built their entire calendar around this, because not only is this Jupiter's kind of orbiting center, but this is also Saturn's orbiting center. And so those that control this are not just coming from the Jupiter side, they're also coming from the Saturn side. And so there's a lot of different camps that you can pile into one camp here and throw all of your conspiracy theory ideas. But it's a side with 2 aspects within it. It has Saturn and Jupiter within its aspect. Saturn and Jupiter both orbit. You'll see that Saturn was discovered in 1610, officially talked about, and then the first moon of it was discovered in 1848, 2 years after Neptune. You remember that was when we had the Doppler effect, 1842. Just like we were saying when we were seeing Jupiter massive and blue in 2017, 2018, with shots like Steve Rady showed on last year in July. We were seeing the same shots, except that now it's back in this aspect of its rotation. It's back too close to the sun for our perspective to be able to get a sight on it. What's happening now, in my opinion, is it's above us. And because it's above us, heading not up back to the Pluto system above it, and not down to the Pluto system far below it, but out to the Pluto system that's just out beyond, slightly below. So it's going to cut through. And it's Jupiter. It's literally Jupiter. But Jupiter, what we're seeing, this big blue planet that has the exact same orbital mechanics as Jupiter, which is why Galileo saw it as Jupiter. And possibly it really is just Jupiter. And the Jupiter we see in the night sky, like the one we saw in the conjunction in the night sky on the 21st of December last year, when we were all marvelling at Jupiter looking massive. Imagine if that was the biggest deception of all, that there was some form of deception in that, because we see this other aspect and the flybys that work with it, and we can see, because, like I say, of the 200-day anomaly, we're seeing a striped object that is actually not Jupiter-sized at all. It's Earth-sized. It's the same size as Earth. That's what I saw in my vision. I saw something flying by, and it had a tail, but it wasn't a dense red tail. It was quite translucent, almost gaseous, but not dense. It wasn't like I'd imagine a tail full of... It was... The more I think about it, and when it passed, in the vision that I was given, when I saw it, and it said, this is what the vast is all about, and it showed me Planet X flying back in 2015. And it flies by the Earth, and the big plasma bolt occurs, but Earth isn't seemingly destroyed in it. It's just a massive, great plasma charge when it actually passes. And we saw the massive plasma charge in the side of Mars. There's no mark on the side of Mars, just like Wal Thornhill tells with his Thunderbolt project, the Thunderbolt that caused the the Valles Mariana scar on Mars, even though you could see all of the kind of the drainage holes where all the water went down, and you see all the water massively disappeared rapidly. You wonder where it went. It didn't evaporate, as Mars would be as smooth as a baby's bottom. It's not. It's kind of like it's torn to bits by a massive amount of water moving very fast, dragging boulders and everything. It had to go somewhere. It had to go down some plug hole, and there it is, the massive scar on Mars. You can see the water went down it. There's no scar after the 14th of October 2016. Well, Thornhill and the Thunderbolt project will never, ever, ever talk about that. How many of you, I'd really, in your comments, or for those of you, how many of you downloaded that shot when Jeff P loaded it up? You know, how many of you downloaded that directly from the webcam in just utter disbelief? You know, just to give some corroboration out there. You know what I mean, to all the Nubians that are just coming to this thinking, Photoshop. No, this is utterly real. I just predicted a massive earthquake exactly to the fucking day because of this model. I put my entire reputation on the line. Can you imagine the people out there thinking he's a doomer and gloomer? When I was coming back from, when I was saying 2018, is that doom and gloom to say that, guys, we don't have to leave nuclear power stations running during this. We don't have to be doomers and gloomers to sort of like say that there's times when you need to sort of switch the nuclear power stations in advance because the earth is going to shake. The earth is going to shake. You're not pessimistic when you're saying, listen, what we'll do is we'll check our boats and put them out there for when the tide comes in. I have to go down and check my boat when the tide comes and everything else like that, especially if I'm on a river and that sort of stuff, and I'm not on the boat. I have to go and take responsibility of the cycles of the moon. You know, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, he was a pompous Englishman. He couldn't take advice from anyone. He knew everything, and so he built his ship in Bristol Harbour. And he got all these shipbuilders to build it for him, and he gave them all the designs. Of course, they all thought he knew exactly what he was doing because it was him at the top and everyone at the bottom. I know it, you do what I say. He crippled the company because he forgot the moon. He forgot the moon. He built these massive paddles on the side of the ship and hadn't accounted for the time it would take him to get it down the Bristol Channel before the tide went out, at the speed he could travel and the width with the paddles. Yeah, he made a massive evolutionary jump. He invented the propeller, but he financially crippled all of those who bankrolled him with his pompousness because he'd forgotten the fundamental astronomical influences that he was dealing with in his design. Now, how many of you, if you just listened to me just before that and just taken a bit of a financial advice and just thought, you know, as this new moon comes in, I'm just going to pull all my money out. Money's going to do what everyone else is going to do. I'm going to go take it to a little safe place. How many of you will do it in the, what's the next one? You know, truly, I don't know. I can't give financial advice, but I did that, you know, and you know, the next first quarter moon is going to be the 18th of June. Not to say that, because you remember we had an earthquake in April, 2 days after the first quarter moon in Chile, and then 1 day after the first quarter moon in Chile again, on the last quarter moon. So we know that the last quarter moon of this sequence is going to be on the 2nd of June. Which means that the 3rd of June, on the 2nd, 3rd of June, these are going to be quite big earthquake days. That's going to be a big earthquake day. You know, it's if this is heading out to getting closer and closer and closer above the ecliptic plane now, but getting closer and closer to it, to exit near to where we're going. You can imagine this is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger the closer we get to July, August, the big crossing. And then we've got the so what I'm suggesting is that is that I was talking about how I was also going to mention how the moon, what's happening with this neat moon and why it's affecting us at that point. But I don't want to drift. Also, I want to come back to that, but I also want to just stay with this idea of this is actually Jupiter. This is actually a big object. It's actually not a Jupiter as in the size of Jupiter as you understand it, but it's the Jupiter that Galileo saw. It's the Jupiter that was seen in 1846. It was the same thing that Isaac Newton saw in 1680. It was the same thing that was seen in 1930. Pluto. Same thing we're seeing now. Every 84 years we see it, we invent a whole new story just to cover it up. We say, oh, it looks so crazy, it looks almost like it's there, doesn't it? Look, bright blue and amazing, so amazing. It's just all about wavelengths, of course, you know. It's not, I mean, it's not really, it's almost like you can touch it, isn't it? It's hilarious. It's right there, because it's right there. And we just throw a story of belief at it, religious belief, righteous belief. And just look at anyone who says it like, special needs! Just nod. The Copernicus story is a flat earth story. It's as bizarre as a flat earth story. Not to knock a flat earth story, because I think a lot of flat earth story is as bizarre as the story we're in, but it's a religious story. It's a religious story, and dreamt up 500 years ago to keep you from knowing your real place in the universe. So this big blue object that is not quite the size of Jupiter at all, but is actually the same size as Earth, is going to go very close to our planet. And this twin-tail object that Brandon Corey Nagley put up in late November, and these other corroborating shots that came with it, again, I blinded my own self. I try and throw the finger of blame always at myself and try and force the transformation of the changes that can occur here. And so I choose to see that as my errors because of my own belief systems, that even when I'm walking away from the Copernicus standard model, that somehow you are the center of the universe, and you're just not. And I'm just got to keep checking that the rain doesn't come down, because we've got a cloud coming in, and I might have to shut this up, but hopefully I'm going to get all this out before I close the lid, because I'm not going to go on too much beyond this. But that shot that Brandon Corey Nagley put up late November, and all those other shots, the mistake I made with those was that they were comet near-wise. They were still coming in. They were the same shots. It was the same thing that that Calvin Looking for Hobbes put up on the 15th of October, the massive shot that was just, and then, you know, we saw that kind of late November shots, you know, like Brandon Corey Nagley posted, and so many other posted very similar corroborating shots all around that same time. You saw the ironically the tide going full, the king tide on the neat moon, on the quarter moon in mid-December. You saw tsunamis. Late November, early December in Greece. You saw all the evidence. You saw the whole temperature spike. You saw a 50 degrees centigrade from -30 to +20 in the Antarctic, and then snow comes in the south of Spain, blankets the whole south and the centre of Spain. You've seen all the evidence of the shift, of the passage, the sightings, the seismology, massive earthquake in late November, early December in Alaska, northern hemisphere, exactly where I'm saying. The Icelandic volcanoes, I told you the calderas would be filling. They fill, it goes off, because I watched this thing coming in and going out. We've been doing it together since 2015, corroborating all the previous timelines and all the previous shots, and just seeing and calculating all the patterns, so we can see why we would expect an earthquake on the 21st of May 2021. why we could see and understand exactly why that would occur, why we can see that June the 2nd and 3rd we can expect earthquakes, and June the 18th, 19th, 20th we can expect serious seismology, serious stuff that's going on. That I've just got some of these aspects confused, and that this striped planet is Hydra itself. That it's not going round it is going round as I've got in this diagram, but it's the third object that I call Hydra itself. And the shot that Brandon Corey Nagley is actually Comet Neowise, that inner aspect that doesn't come around the sun. And that's the correction. So why do the earthquakes occur then on the neat moons and not on the new moons? I think I've got it. I'm not guaranteeing I've got it. These are based on the patterns that we see. The reason it's occurring is because the moon and the earth is being pulled up above its ecliptic plane, and the moon is being pulled above its ecliptic plane of its orbit around the earth towards the object that's above it. And when it comes down and it crosses the ecliptic plane that the Earth is sitting on, its ecliptic plane, which potentially at that point is sitting, like I say, above, slightly above the ecliptic plane of the system it normally orbits, because it's being drawn above. But just staying with the moon at this aspect, as the moon cuts through, there's a charge of electromagnetic energy, and that amplifies whatever's there. And it's this charge that is exciting the magma in the planet to cause these massive shifts. Everything is moving. It's like a massive release of energy. A charge is being created, and that Earth experiences that in excitement in the core. And that is what's causing it, in my opinion. I don't truly know, but it's that point of crossing again. And all of these stories are about points of crossing. And so that's the corrections. You know, in this aspect now up till, remember, like I say, this is not getting to the May point like in 2008 and just going back up to the Pluto system above us, that was above us in that aspect that has been above us since Carlos Ferrada's time back in the 30s and 40s. It's been way above us, and these objects, most time every 12 years you get one of them coming into view, like, you know, we'll call it, like we did in '86, we'll call it Halley's Comet. We'll come up with the name of a comet each time, but you'll see it comes in every 12 years, all the seismology. And this pattern is ultimately the not specifically Hydra. Hydra is, but it's the furthest orbiting object, which is the one we're not the one that we're going to, the big one, this stripe one, but that's, you know, that's the one that that affects us in early August, early to late August possibly, but most likely early August, I'd imagine. And July is going to be one of the pair, and it's the furthest one of those that we've been seeing every 12 years and calling it a different name, just like we call it we've been seeing them, you know, from 2011 to 2018. We saw them every 200 days, and then they massively increased as we got into super close proximity. And that's going on now. That's happening now. You're in this story now. You know, I've predicted a lot of flybys. Some of them massive. some of them massive. And you know, the environmental community doesn't know which camp to believe. Most of it gone to grand solar minimum. They don't really know what it gives them, what protection it gives them, what they can protect themselves or prepare themselves for, but it's as far as they're willing to go. Everyone is restricted by a story of belief at the moment that the absolute truth of the situation is not allowed to be seen. You cannot be put into a place or arrive at a place where you can come up with a viable solution because your belief systems will not allow you to go there on any way, any level. Most of those who enter the arena, the Planet X arena, are there only to police it. So many are just there to police it and control the beliefs with religious doctrine. It's most cannot allow it to be what it is. Even I struggle. You can see the path of that object in December, and I chose not to see that. I can't believe I chose not to see it. You can see the curve of it, just like you can see the curve of it with Alex Luhan's shot on the 1st of September 2019. You can see the curve of it. Why I didn't see that, why I was blind to that. I just amaze myself sometimes of how blind I can be when I put a story forward as well. And that's why I try to keep upgrading the story and keep upgrading the model. And when I get more time with all this latest information, I can now upgrade this model to a whole new level and simplify it down, because it's boiling itself down now. It's becoming a little bit simpler to understand all those aspects now, because we can start breaking, we've been able to separate certain objects. You know, you look at all this information now, if you're new to this, you're looking at all this information now and just thinking, this is just too, but you break this information down over years of all the different flybys coming in and all the speculation and all the different models, and you get to know each and every aspect, because I deal with so many shots and sightings of this, because I've been doing it for such a long time. And I inadvertently working with so many different sky watchers, sending me a lot of information. And most of the sky watchers I work with, I work with, are just veteran sky watchers for me that have been doing it for a long time and have got the right intentions with this, and they ultimately want the information to be out there and for you to see for yourself what it is we're dealing with, not just their story. That's why I've got a lot of respect for anyone out there who's willing to look at this without judgment and without attempting to disempower the person or condemn them and condemn themselves with disempowerment. Anyone out there who's using disempowerment, who thinks they're so lofty and supreme in their specialness, to be so above the ridiculousness of building nuclear power stations on fault lines and not switching them off when you can absolutely guarantee earthquakes and volcanoes are going to occur. Because you're too special, too important. Don't need to give that any energy. That would be negative. It's not your problem. You're too special to have to worry about that. It doesn't fit in with your religious story. I mean, this object, you understand, is this big object, Hydra. It is, for all intensive purposes. You know, it's the blue Kachina, the red Kachina. It's Nibiru. It's Jupiter. It's Pluto. It's Neptune. It's Uranus. It's Seti B. It's Jesus. It's Jesus' great prediction that came in 262, as Jesus said, and it's coming again. This will be his second coming. This is what Jesus foretold would come. This is the grand cleaner of this world. This is what maintains the real status quo. This is who you are really negotiating with. You know, but the Catholics have used this story against this earth because they went so royally under the wheels of it back in 262, the Romans. And this is their God. You know, they sold it to us as Jesus. But it's the same celestial object, causing all the same problems. And anything that is of war on this earth, it removes. And it also performs a psychic enema, an astral enema on planet Earth. There's nothing that can stay, no astral link to this planet can stay here that is not held in place and rooted firmly within the heart of the matter. Nothing has the fingers or the hands to hold on to this realm when this thing flies by. This thing will take anything and everything that is not attached to the human heart. Anything and everything. And all of these things, all of these attachments have all been connected to you through stories. Good stories, bad stories, various stories. How you choose to connect to divinity. And that's what this is all about. And all of these stories, you know, you can be in love with your building carbon dioxide, building nuclear power stations on fault lines to stop the carbon dioxide spewing out of volcanoes. Remember, of the 0.03 or 0.04% carbon dioxide in the air at any one time overall, that officially, the official figure is 3% of that 0.04 is created by humanity. 3%. The rest is spewing out of volcanoes and occurring as natural phenomena. Most of it geological. The oceans are fighting for a third of all of the water, or of all of the carbon dioxide, because of the moon. The moon traps the air and turns it into 100 squillion trillion bubbles. And each one of those bubbles has massively, all of those trillions of squillions of bubbles massively increase the surface to air ratio, and a massive dump of carbon dioxide is performed because of those crashing waves created by the moon. Thus, the moon makes the sea salty. The moon causes the oceans to absorb the carbon dioxide and produce carbonic acid, separate the calcium ions from the bedrock, and thus release the kingpin that holds the rock together. Now all the minerals, all the elements can be released, the potassiums, the salts, all of it can be now released into the water. And now life can begin, because the building blocks that create a world of matter now exist in place because of the carbon dioxide. Take away the volcanoes, take away the life, take away the 97% of the 0.04% of carbon dioxide that we've demonized with this horrible story, that we need to build nuclear power stations on fault lines while we watch our loved ones die of cancer in our very eyes, saying that we can't go to see them because we're scared we might kill them with a fucking pandemic as they die. While nuclear power stations are going bang. Literally, when I say nuclear power stations can fail at this time, and then we see a pump failure in Iran, literally when I say this is going to go off because the pumps melt, to send these reactors into cold shutdown means you have to hit the pump and operate the pump, so the pump pumps water into the chambers and cools everything below a certain point so they're not less volatile. Then if everything goes wobbly, the whole thing shakes, everything breaks down and that sort of stuff. You could just stand there with a hose pipe and just keep cold water running over them and they would be stable. It would be very easy to control them. but to wait until the pumps, anything that is holding electricity, when that surcharge, a computer system that is fully running and has got full of electricity, will get a surge. And if they're already at their max with all their transistors, that surge will cause all those transistors to blow. Whole systems, any system that's running on electricity, when that surge occurs, will melt. Any pump that's full of electricity because it's pumping high, it's at its max, those windings will just go red and they will melt and potentially cause a fire. But imagine if that cooling process is essential to contain an even worse situation if those pumps fail, because the windings have all melted, because no one switched them off before the surge occurred, even though they could see absolutely there was a surge going to occur, like happened in August 1859 with the Carrington, when anything that was contained wire that was carrying its full load experienced a massive surge in electricity and everything melted. And that was back then, and electricity we think was barely existing in 1859, and yet loads of factories, people were injured in heavy machinery that experienced a massive surge and exploded with sparks, or failed at the most worst possible time when they needed that and they were in jeopardy. There was all sorts of crazy stories that happened in 1859 with the massive surge that affected this planet from pole to pole. We are coming into that aspect now. And I've put my money on the line with these predictions, and you can see you can make me out to be a doomer and gloomer, or condemn me with a little kind of like, you know, the subtle little thing that people like saying when you mention their name, they're like, ugh. And they just do their little, it's a stab in the back. It's done as a friendly gesture, like, oh, he's my friend, but you stabbing them in the back. You make sure you give that little tone that's just that subtle little thing that's just like, this is what you've got to think about them. If he talks about switching nuclear reactors off, make sure he looks like an idiot. Make sure that no one listens to him. I don't care how many flyby he's predicted. No one can threaten the nuclear apocalypse of Earth. That is the belief system that is running and bellowing through the human mind that we are not taking responsibility for, because we are not owning what we're doing. We're just pretending to be environmentalists. We're just pretending to care when we're running these stories just for profit, just to move dollars, just so we can have our nice big houses, and run these horrible stories where we go and buy these big flashy cars which we know can consume 100 times more fuel in manufacture than a car would ever consume in its life, just to run these barbarically stupid stories, just for our self-importance, that we're environmentalists, and special environmentalists. The guide's message to us is that we are not special, and we need to know our place. If we come to a religious state, understand that if that turns you into a supremacist, where you think you're special, you've gone down the wrong road. You know, when you come into service to humanity through your beliefs, or through your religious or your aspirations to connect to the divinity that lies behind this earth. So you might want to come into earth service and help this earth. Is not by becoming special. That's special needs. That's just special needs. It's just a religious indoctrination. And so this aspect is a clock now. You can see through this, you can see the hands of the grand clock. And this gives you all, whatever your mission is here to complete before you're clock strikes the hour, whatever your missions are, know that your clocks are ticking. All of ours. My clock, your clock. Your time to achieve your goal here, whatever that is. Perhaps you've achieved it. Perhaps the work was all done and you can sit back and say, I've done my best. I tried to save this earth. I can see what's happening, but nothing I can do. Or maybe there is something you can do. You have to decide that. Maybe do the little bit of a kind of like about Dave Dobbs. Make sure that whoever mentioned my name is left to feel a little bit silly, left to feel a little bit stupid. Make sure you cast your power of doubt into the equation, and that's all the ego offers. Is it makes sure that doubt is incorporated into any divinity, that you cannot, anyone who comes past you, you condemn their magic with your doubt. And in so doing, everyone who does this, when you condemn someone else's magic with doubt, so you condemn yourself. Doubt is a disease of the human state, and it belongs with belief. And it is a sickness. It is a sickness which is going to do great harm to humanity and has done great harm to humanity. It is an affliction. It is a grim reaper. It blinds humanity. They cannot see. Because they're blinded by their self-importance. Because of their religious supremacy. It leads them into judgment. And they separate themselves from their highest aspect. Because they are special. And the guides and the gods don't do special, they only do equal. They only do equal. And so, you know, go with this which way you're going to go now, but this is absolutely happening. And unfortunately, there's very little that's going to happen to change it. Or is there? I was told, don't worry about your earth. I've already deployed my best. That was my message given to me. It lifted me. I've already deployed my best. Unprecedented peace will now be waged upon your earth. I wonder who they are. I wonder who they are that are going to rise to the challenge of this time. You know, this whole financial nastiness that was created. You know, you imagine, you know, when Dick Gregory won president-elect back in November 1968, and then all his votes were taken from him and taken from this black man, this black comedian. How could a black comedian possibly win? You know, the New York Times, or I think it was, had it on the sort of like, you know, on the front cover, you know, some computers can't be trusted, as in talking about even back in the 60s, the machine that counted the results for the election in 1969 and found a black comedian to be 6 million ahead of anyone else. And they'd taken his votes away and just blatantly gave them to Richard Nixon, who promptly turned the gold-backed Federal Reserve into a debt-backed dollar, a senseless dollar, a goldless dollar, a dollar driven only by the speculation of its own value and the fact that this would create the massive vacuum cleaner that could potentially suck up all of the wealth of the land. This is the story we're really in. We're coming to the end of economic hegemony. And that wall that we come to the end of is a technological wall, an environmental wall, an ecological wall. But you know, you can sort of see it. You know, you think about the Patriot missiles back in the 90s, and how the Iron Dome was once made of. You know, the Israeli Iron Dome was made up of Patriot missiles, and then the Russians developed the S-300, and then the Americans invent the THAAD missiles that now make up a lot of the Iron Dome. But then the Chinese invent a missile that can shoot a THAAD missile. You know, this is outside of intercontinental missiles that kind of deliver kind of like multiple nuclear head kind of payloads. These are rockets that knock out rockets. And now, you know, with the rockets that the Chinese developed that can knock out the THAAD missiles, and then the Russians released the S-400. You know, this is a technological game where technology on the war front becomes like milk in your fridge. Very quickly it goes off, as you're desperate to try and sell it to someone to start another war over here before this technology goes off, and they can buy it over here far cheaper from someone else that's much greater technology. If this one over here can shoot 5 rockets a second, and the Chinese over here can shoot 6 rockets a second, then the game is over in 1 second. Because after 1 second, one fires 5. On the 6th, the game is over. And this is the place where the new technological front has occurred. Is who's got the most forward hand, which ones you go to. And so no one's got a solution. All the time, the war option or the winning option in war is obsolete. You're forced into a new place because it's very difficult to go to war if you know that it's going to be over, number one, in seconds. Not like the 100-Year War. Bits of information, whole families kind of like moving in, setting up camp, whole generations, building schools. You know, people kind of growing up, getting old, dying in the cycle of a single war, because the information of what to do and the moving the armaments one way and the other and the whole thing takes so long. It took 100 years to do the whole thing. That same war potentially in this day and age. Remember, the First World War started with cavalry and ended in tanks and bombers. The Second World War started with tanks and bombers and ended with the nuclear bomb. You know, it was not Isaac Newton. It was Einstein said, you know, if the Third World War begins, the Fourth World War will begin with bows and arrows. Why did he say that? Why did he say that? Because it's a sure-gone conclusion that if you have a war with the type of intelligence on the table right now, the only thing comes out of it is total destruction of humanity, and we are virtually wiped clean, which means that this massive technological jump that we experienced by opening this massive door, this massive Pandora's box that has led to this current situation with what is nothing more than an intellectual membrane between two different levels of species evolution, world species evolution. You know, we are simply taking technology from a more advanced civilization that we don't fully understand, that is omitted in our story and yet is present in every aspect. We can see its involvement on so many levels, but we, again, can't believe it. Go figure. What is belief? Where does it come from? What pipes it in? This is what is coming to a conclusion. The entities which are attached to us through the story of belief, which I'm a mind, is being done via technology, is about to be massively compromised. Every human being on this planet is going to experience a clear mind, is going to experience itself beyond its hack, where these entities are being piped in through technologies that we don't fully understand to control a narrative within us that we define as I. And many of us are going to realise we are not the I's we thought we were. And many of us are going to become the I's. And the real I is going to step aside. And the human being will experience itself without that aspect. Which, if that is the human choice, I was told, so it has to be each human's choice of which soul it chooses to finally be, which soul it chooses to tally. It said, if you do not want me, you do not have to have me. That was its exact words. There is no God, your divine connection does not see you as its property. It sees you as a sentient, free, sovereign being that has the right to tally with that. But you are not slave to that, and it is not slave to you. It's choice that brought you here, and invitation. An invitation was extended, and you made a choice. And if you choose to terminate that invitation, it is a choice. If you choose to go with another, go to a story that leads you into blame and hate and all these negative emotions that feeds you into your religious supremacy, that you have the right to do the heinous crimes that you're doing. If you want peace, prepare for war. NATO. Desperately provoking. They're terrified. NATO's the leaders of NATO are clearly just too absolutely daft to actually really understand the implications of what they're doing. It's all done through this the nature of what religious supremacy creates in a person, especially a young person who's fed with that type of religious garbage. To feed them into war over and over again. Humanity has a few things to learn here, but in the eyes of the guides, humanity is not the enemy here. Humanity is merely the conduit. The conduit is being subverted. And we have got to try and break away now and come into our sovereign heart spaces again and retain our highest aspect if we want to, if we choose to. And that's what's coming through this story. And you, by looking at the problems that you face right now, which are going to be heavy, which are going to be painful to look at, you're going to have to turn the finger on yourself for a change. If you're a Christian, you're going to have to look at yourself and try and change some things in yourself rather than trying to change some things out there. If you're a Christian, a real Christian, you're going to come into complete service to this earth like a monk, a real Christian. You're never going to preach it to another person again in your entire lives. You're just going to show by example what the devotion to God is like. Do you think Jesus went on about? Jesus. There's those who treat by example and those who are there to preach by supremacy. And if you're teaching by supremacy, try teaching it with your daily lives, with your practice of who you truly are, not what you think they should be, or what you think they're not, or they're disgusting gods over there, fake gods, horrible, fakes, what's that? Demonstrate the beauty of your God by showing the beauty that it manifests within you. Show us how saved you are by the joy. You bring into this equation. And the forgiveness that you can show. And the aggression you can pacify. And the kindness you can afford. Don't show us how special you are. Here we go. So the next phase. You know, I'm not going to make as many videos through this now. It's just like I'm pretty much done. I think really we're just going through it now, and it's just like it's something that we've chosen to try to control. A story that we've attempted to control to the religious orders of the masters we truly have served, all of us, independently, ways in which we go. And we must all understand that no one gets out alive. So you've got nothing to fear. Nothing. Nothing at all. Just know that within all this story there is a place opening up at the end of this. But this is the cycle, and that's why I wrote Laughing Gas. Here marks the end of the age. Here marks the beginning of the age. Great knowledge and great wisdom comes with great responsibility. You're all choosing either your highest or your other aspects. There's no right or wrong choice. It's what works best for you. But understanding that with separation there is bereavement on both sides. Whether you choose to let go of your ego self or whether you choose to let go of your higher self. There's no invasion here. There's no possession here. There's only choice. Only choice. You are choosing every aspect of what you wish to be. All of you. Me also. I'm susceptible to anger and all the rest of it and all the other emotions. I'm a human being in this realm susceptible to everything that affects humanity. I struggle with all the same things. You know, but I'm not perfect in this place. I'm an equal to my brethren. I'm equal in the face of the gods and the guides. But I just want you to know that those of you that choose to leave this plane, there's no right or wrong, there's no judgment. Call it economic circumstance. Whatever you want to call it. Which drives you to make the choice that you make and be the person that you choose to become. The singularity that you will become at the end of this, absolutely, as I will become, as every living being on this planet. Most of them already are. But for humanity, every human will be a singularity on this plane after this transit. Every one of them. One human, one soul, and absolutely no backseat drivers, absolutely no interference, driving humanity to do heinous crimes and taking no direct responsibility other than driving humanity into the dirt and teaching humanity about whoring itself for technological trophies. And that's really all that's happened. We've exchanged a lot of sovereignty for iPhones and spy phones and what we consider to be technology. That's all this is. It's been an attempt to make a massive jump in technologically. And it's come at a price. It's come at a price. But that price, all through this, has already been paid. It's all been paid. Every aspect of this, the karmic debts of our choices, we have paid karmically. All of you, each and every one of you, as you have gone in love and helped and aided, so you have been reborn into that. And that becomes what you create in one life. It becomes so much about what is there for you in the next life, and so on and so forth, and what you hate and what you judge and what you choose to destroy with this life, you will also be born into. You know, all of those who have been involved in the covering of Iraq in depleted uranium, in the form of depleted uranium bombshells, and these heinous crimes. You, on an emotional level, are not bound by that because you are being sent there by a bunch of gods to come back. You, beyond this, are just a pure emotional being that was given a wonderful opportunity to come to Earth. And that experience, you got used to do heinous crimes against all that you dreamed of doing. You will want, when you return, if you were involved in those heinous crimes, you will not be able to do anything other on an emotional level than to devote many, many lifetimes to try and correct that problem, even if it's just to come and incarnate within the toxicity and use the bodies you wish to incarnate in it to suck up the radiation which you spew. This is indebtedness. It's not a karmic equation. It's feeling indebted to give something back to a world which offers you so much. And many of you choose to leave now and you don't wish to return. Well, those that give up, the highest aspect says, no, this body does not want me. This body is connected to another entity which it calls I, which it associates with I. That is all which it wishes to tally, and I honour and respect that choice. I will not cause division in this human being anymore. I offer you this human being because it has chosen, it does not wish to be with me. It is a Passover. And in exchange of that, there is an exchange. And I talked about this, but I've never talked about the exchange. And that exchange is very simple, and it's a very attractive proposition for many. It means that when the soul you choose to pass over, or the body that you choose to pass over, if you choose not to be present in this time, and allow your anger and your religious supremacy or your fear to be the overcoming and overriding experience. And you go into the story and you go down that corridor that so many, including myself, know so well, of belief and judgment and all these things where you are compromised. And you choose to go down there and you choose not to stand your ground and rise to the occasion. Then that which comes, that which you offer yourself to, also takes on your karmic debts. That's the exchange. And let's bear in mind that that was the influence that created all the mayhem in the first place. And so you leave that aspect behind. You take your best. That's always yours. The highest aspirations of these lives will always be yours. That's what you project. Humanity is nothing more than a lens that projects into a higher space all that is wonderful about everything you do. That's what makes the higher realms. That's why we come here. This is where the architecture is performed for these higher aspects. This is the puppet shop where you build the avatars which you take into a higher space, modelled through the experiences of the love and the passion and the compassion you found in this earth, which are the tools which project to a higher level. This is the door that opens to you. This is what Hydra really is. Hydra is our second earth. Hydra is where it all builds, where the astral realms from this world the finest are transported to Hydra. It is a new world, working on a higher vibrational frequency, not in the way in which you understand matter here. And the only way you can get in there is with peaceful intention. That is your binding contract to get in. It's not so interested in your stories of supremacy or why you're so special. Just so you understand one basic thing. That's all it wants from you in there. One basic thing. I've got ants climbing the camera. Come here, you little fiend. Come here, you little rascal. Got him. He's down there. I didn't kill him, by the way. I just flicked him off. Talk about love and light and stuff. Yeah, well, anyway, he's just down there somewhere in the foliage of the grass. Looks like a jungle down there for him. Her, sorry, sexist. Politically correct, please. Just check my batteries while I'm on that note, because I think we're pretty much done, aren't we? You know, and the battery light is nearly gone. And I thought I'd use a microphone because I noticed last time I was kind of moving to and fro, and the microphone was going up and down. So I thought I'd better start using my my radio mic. So I'll do some overlays with that. Obviously, you've got next big phases of this coming in, and all of us have got big choices to make. This is when the shit really starts hitting the fan. This is a lot of people going to want to sell their houses, reeling the market, and not going to be able to get out because they're not going to be able to raise this money to pay off all their kind of like their mortgage arrears that were that now need to be settled, or go on to the end of the mortgage, but you have a shit credit rating until they're paid off, which means it's very difficult for you to get another mortgage, blah, blah, blah. You know, this is the type of story that they're going to drive us into. This is the point. This is the big financial crash, and we're going to throw a million different stories at it. But you can see the real precursor is from the perspective of using this as an opportunity to bring the vibration down. So you choose. You know, bring it back to the original kind of stories of Planet X. Well, maybe not the original, maybe not kind of the Sumerian, but after Sumeria, you know, we had the Zoroastrians, and their understanding of Planet X was Zoroaster was the after, this is the first monotheism, before Abraham, before Christianity, before Judaism, before, this was the original monotheology, one God kind of mentality. And the Zoroastrian kind of like Zoroastrian kind of God was Zarathustra, and it was a clear mind, a clear, beautiful mind, and this could be invaded by anger, an angry mind, a judgmental mind that believes that you should be this, and if you're not doing this and that for me, and you're not my slave, I've got no power over you. If you cannot be manipulated and be what I need you to be, your purpose cannot be recognized on this plane. You need to idolize me. I am special, not you. I am precious. This is the message we're trying to overcome here. This is the message we're trying to get through. This is the higher place we're trying to get beyond, where we are in service to this great story. To the divinity that is really behind all of this, that really offers this whole experience. Anyway, all the love in the world, that's kind of it. I'm just kind of drifting off a little bit there, and I'm a little bit tired. And I don't know what next to do really in this grand scheme of everything that's going on now, but we are in it. It is happening. It is going to intensify now. And you're going to have to make some pretty big decisions about who you want to be within this story. And really navigate emotionally through each aspect. You're going to be challenged on so many different fronts because they're going to try and pull you down. And attack you at every interval. They don't know why they have to attack you, what part of him that has to come forward and attack in that moment, but they will have to attack. And it affects us all, the battle's in all of us. This is where the battle is happening now. In our self-importance. And our specialness. And we're not special. We are all equal. Honey in the heart, 1,000 thank yous, and good luck out there. It's getting bigger now. Come on, you can do this.